Marin Ashfield had been sneaking into Lord Ravencourt's private garden for 7 nights, bringing her son each time, because the immortal lord had wept at the garden gate and her boy had whispered those impossible words. And now she had to know if what her mother's hands had once mended could somehow mend a creature who should not be able to break. The first time she had seen him, she had been walking home from the draper's shop where she worked 14 hours each day, her fingers raw from needlework, her son Toby trudging beside her with his hand in hers. The boy was 8 years old, small for his age, with dark eyes that saw too much. They had been passing the iron gates of Ravencourt Manor when they heard it, a sound so desolate it stopped them both mid-step. A man knelt on the other side of the gate, his forehead pressed against the bars, his shoulders shaking. He wore evening clothes of obvious quality, black coat and silver waistcoat, but his cravat hung loose and his hair fell forward in disarray. In the gaslight, his skin looked impossibly pale, almost luminous. Marin should have hurried past. A gentleman's grief was not her concern, and she had learned long ago that involving herself in the affairs of the wealthy brought nothing but trouble. But Toby had pulled his hand free and walked straight to the gate. "Don't cry, sir," her son had said in his quiet, serious voice. "My mother can mend anything." The man had lifted his head. His eyes were the color of winter storms, gray and silver and ancient. He stared at Toby with an expression Marin could not read, shock perhaps, or hunger, or something closer to wonder. "Can she?" he had whispered. Before Marin could pull her son away, before she could apologize for the intrusion, the man had stood and walked through the gate as though it had not been locked. She had heard no click, seen no key. One moment the gate was closed. The next he stood before them on the pavement. Impossibly tall, impossibly still. "What is your name?" he had asked Toby. "Toby Ashfield, sir. And this is my mother, Marin." The man had turned those strange eyes on her, and Marin had felt the weight of his gaze like a physical thing. "Your son says you can mend anything, Mistress Ashfield. Is this true?" Her throat had gone dry. "I do alterations, sir. Mending, stitching, nothing more." "Nothing more," he had repeated, and something in his voice made it sound like a question. "And yet your son believes in your skill absolutely. Children are rarely wrong about such things." He had reached into his coat and withdrawn a handkerchief, silk, embroidered with initials she could not make out in the dim light. He held it out to her, and she saw that it was torn nearly in half, the fabric shredded as though by claws. "Mend this," he had said. "If you can make it whole again, return it to me here, tomorrow night, at this same hour. Will you do this?" Marin had taken the handkerchief because refusing seemed impossible. The silk was cold in her hands, colder than evening air could account for. "I will try, sir. Trying is all any of us can do." He had looked at Toby again, and his expression had softened into something that might have been tenderness. "Thank you, young man, for your kindness." Then he had turned and walked back through the gate, which closed behind him with a soft click. Marin had stood there, her son's hand once again in hers, the torn handkerchief clutched in her other hand, and wondered what she had just agreed to. That night, after Toby had fallen asleep in their narrow bed in the boarding house, Marin had sat by the single candle and examined the handkerchief. The damage was extensive, not just torn but savaged. The edges were ragged, the threads pulled and frayed. It would take hours to repair, and even then it would never be quite the same. But her mother had taught her well. Marin threaded her finest needle and began to work, her stitches small and precise, drawing the torn edges together with infinite patience. She worked until her eyes burned and her fingers cramped, until the candle guttered low and the first gray light of dawn crept through the window. When she finished, the handkerchief was whole. The repair was visible if one looked closely, a fine tracery of stitches across the silk, but it held. It would not tear again in the same place. She had returned to the gate the next evening with Toby, the mended handkerchief wrapped in brown paper. The man had been waiting. He took the package from her hands, unwrapped it slowly, and held the handkerchief up to the gaslight. "Remarkable," he had said softly. "You have made it stronger than it was." "The stitches reinforce the fabric, sir. It will not tear there again." He had looked at her with those storm-gray eyes, and she had seen something in them that made her breath catch. A loneliness so profound, it seemed to have its own gravity. "Will you come into my garden, Mistress Ashfield? You and your son? I would like to show you something." Every instinct screamed at her to refuse. She did not know this man. She did not know why he had been weeping at his own gate, or why a simple mending had affected him so. But Toby had already slipped his hand into the man's, trusting as only children could be, and Maren found herself nodding. The garden behind Ravencourt Manor was unlike anything she had ever seen. Even in the darkness, she could make out the shapes of elaborate topiaries, stone fountains, paths that wound between beds of night-blooming flowers. The air smelled of jasmine and something else, something cold and sweet that lived just beyond her tongue. He had led them to a fountain in the center of the garden, where water fell in silver streams over marble carved in the shape of angels. In the moonlight, the angels looked almost alive, their faces turned upward in expressions of rapture or despair. "I built this garden 300 years ago," the man had said quietly. "I have watched it grow and change and die and grow again. I have tended it through wars and plagues and the turning of centuries. And yet tonight, when I looked at it, I saw only ruin, only the evidence of time's passage. Only the certainty that everything I touch will eventually crumble to dust." Maren had stared at him. 300 years. The words should have been madness, but something in his voice made them sound like simple truth. "You are not human," she had said. "No, I have not been human for a very long time." He had knelt beside the fountain, trailing his fingers through the water. "I am what your kind calls vampire, immortal, unchanging, and so very, very tired of watching everything beautiful fall apart." Toby had walked to the fountain and peered into the water. "Is that why you were crying, sir? Because you are sad about the garden?" "Among other things, yes." "But the garden is not ruined," Toby had said with the absolute certainty of childhood. "It is only sleeping for winter. In spring it will bloom again. My mother told me so." The man, the vampire, had looked at Maren with an expression she could not read. "Is this true?" "Gardens are resilient, sir. They endure. Unlike those who tend them." He had stood, brushing water from his fingers. "I have forgotten how to see resilience, I think. I have lived so long that I see only entropy, only loss." That had been 7 nights ago. Since then, Maren had returned each evening with Toby, and each evening the vampire had shown them more of his garden, speaking of the plants he had cultivated, the rare specimens he had collected from across the world, the careful architecture of paths and beds and water features. He spoke with the passion of an artist and the weariness of a man who no longer believed his art mattered. His name, she had learned, was Valerian Ravencourt. He lived alone in the great manor, served by a single elderly butler who came only during daylight hours. He did not feed on humans. He kept a small flock of sheep in a meadow beyond the garden wall, and he spoke of them with surprising tenderness. "I made a choice, 2 centuries ago," he had told her on the 3rd night, as they walked beneath an arbor heavy with dormant wisteria. "I would not be a monster. I would not take human life to sustain my own. It has made me weak by the standards of my kind, but it has allowed me to live with myself." "That must be lonely," Maren had said. "Loneliness is the price of conscience." He had paused, looking down at her. "But you understand this already, do you not? You have paid a price for your choices." She had not asked how he knew. Perhaps it was written on her face, the exhaustion, the worn dress carefully mended, the way she counted coins before buying bread. "I made a choice 4 years ago. I will not speak of it." "Speak. I would not ask you to." His voice had been gentle. We are all entitled to our secrets, Mistress Ashfield. But on the seventh night, as they stood together in the garden, while Toby chased fireflies between the hedges, Valerian had turned to her with an intensity that pressed against the base of her throat. "Why do you keep returning?" he had asked. "I have given you no payment. I have offered you nothing but the company of a creature who should frighten you. You do not frighten me. I should. Perhaps." She had watched Toby's small form darting through the shadows, heard his delighted laughter. "But my son was right. You were broken, and I wanted to see if you could be mended." "And your verdict?" She had looked up at him, at the pale perfection of his face, the ancient sorrow in his eyes. "I think you have been mending yourself for 200 years, sir. You simply have not noticed." He had reached out then, slowly, as though afraid she might flee, and touched her cheek with fingers that were cool and impossibly gentle. "You see me more clearly than I see myself. That is because you are looking at the wrong things. You see the garden dying. I see it resting. You see yourself as a monster. I see a man who has fought very hard not to be one." Marin. Her name on his lips sounded like a prayer. "I have not felt hope in so long I had forgotten what it tastes like. And then your son spoke to me through a gate, and you mended what I thought was beyond repair. And suddenly—" The crack of a gunshot split the night air. Marin screamed. Valerian moved faster than her eyes could follow, a blur of shadow and speed. She heard Toby cry out, heard men's voices shouting, and then Valerian was there, her son clutched against his chest, blood spreading across the vampire's shoulder. 3 men emerged from the darkness beyond the garden wall. They wore the rough clothes of laborers, but they carried pistols and stakes, and their faces were hard with purpose. "Step away from the woman and child, demon," the largest one said. He was broad-shouldered and scarred, with the look of a man who had seen violence and dealt it in equal measure. "We are the Brotherhood of the Silver Cross. We have been hunting you for months." Valerian set Toby down gently, positioning himself between the boy and the hunters. "I have harmed no one. You are vampire. That is harm enough." The man raised his pistol. "The bullet in your shoulder is silver. You are already dying. Surrender, and we will make it quick." Marin felt ice flood her veins. Silver. She had heard the old stories, the whispered warnings. Silver was poison to vampires, burning through their flesh like acid. Valerian swayed on his feet, his face going even paler. "The woman and child are innocent. Let them go. The woman has been consorting with a monster. She is tainted." The hunter's eyes fixed on Marin with cold judgment. "We will cleanse her. Teach her the error of her ways." Something in Marin snapped. She had spent 4 years bowing to judgment, accepting punishment, carrying the weight of other people's righteousness. She had sacrificed everything, her reputation, her family, her place in society, to protect her son from the truth of his birth. She had worked her fingers raw, had gone hungry so Toby could eat, had endured the sneers and whispers of the respectable women who would not speak to her. She was done bowing. "You will not touch my son," she said, her voice ringing clear across the garden, "and you will not touch Lord Ravencourt." The hunter laughed. "You defend a monster?" "I defend a man who has shown more kindness to my son in 7 nights than any of your righteous brotherhood has shown in 8 years." She moved to stand beside Valerian, felt him try to push her behind him. She held her ground. "He has harmed no one. He tends his garden and keeps his sheep and lives quietly. What threat is he to you? His existence is threat enough." "Then you are cowards." The words came out hard and cold. "You hunt a man who has chosen peace, who has fought his own nature for 2 centuries to avoid becoming what you claim he is. You are the monsters here, not him." The hunter's face darkened. "Silence, woman. You do not understand." I understand perfectly. Marin felt Toby's hand slip into hers, felt Valerian's weight beginning to lean against her as the silver poisoning spread. I understand that you are men who need someone to hunt, someone to hate, because it is easier than examining your own darkness. I understand that you call yourselves holy while you murder the innocent. He is not innocent. He is more innocent than you. She looked at the other two hunters, saw uncertainty flicker in their faces. How many vampires have you killed? How many did you investigate first, to see if they were truly monsters, or do you simply assume that anything different from you deserves death? One of the younger hunters lowered his pistol slightly. Thomas, perhaps We should finish what we came to do. The leader raised his weapon again. Step aside, woman. This is your last warning. Marin did not move. Then you will have to shoot through me. For a long moment, the garden was silent, except for the splash of the fountain and Valerian's labored breathing. The hunter's finger tightened on the trigger. Please, Valerian whispered, his voice rough with pain. Marin, please, take Toby and go. I am not worth this. She looked up at him, at the man who had wept at his own gate because he thought beauty was dying, who had built a garden that would outlive him, who had chosen conscience over comfort for 200 years. You are worth everything. The hunter fired. Marin felt the impact like a fist to her chest, felt herself falling backward. But the pain did not come. Instead, she heard a roar of rage, saw Valerian move despite his wound, saw him tear the pistol from the hunter's hand with inhuman strength. The bullet had missed. The hunter's hand had trembled at the last moment, and the shot had gone wide. Valerian stood over the fallen hunter, his fangs bared, his eyes blazing with silver fire. He looked every inch the monster they claimed he was, terrifying, deadly, beyond human mercy. Please, the hunter whispered. Please, I have a family. Valerian's hand shook. The garden held its breath. Then he stepped back. Go, take your brotherhood and go. If you return, I will not be merciful a second time. The hunters fled, stumbling over each other in their haste to reach the wall. Within moments, they had vanished into the night, leaving only the echo of their footsteps and the acrid smell of gunpowder. Valerian collapsed. Marin caught him, or tried to. He was too heavy, too tall. They went down together in a tangle of limbs, and she found herself kneeling in the grass with his head in her lap, blood seeping from the wound in his shoulder. Toby, she said urgently, run to the manor. Find the butler. Tell him to bring clean cloth and hot water. Her son ran, his small legs pumping. Marin pressed her hands against Valerian's wound, felt the unnatural heat of the silver burning through his flesh. Foolish woman, Valerian breathed. You should have let them kill me. Be quiet. I am a monster. You said so yourself. I said no such thing. I said you were not a monster, and I meant it. She pressed harder, trying to staunch the bleeding. You will not die. I will not allow it. Marin. His hand came up to cover hers, cold and trembling. I have lived 300 years. Perhaps it is time. It is not time. She was crying now, tears streaming down her face. You have too much left to do. Your garden needs you. The spring needs you. She stopped, the words catching in her throat. You? He prompted softly. I need you. The confession came out broken. I have been alone for so long, carrying everything, trusting no one. And then you wept at your gate, and my son spoke to you, and you led us into your garden, into your life. You did not judge me. You did not ask about my past or my mistakes. You simply accepted us. Do you know how rare that is? Do you know what that means? Marin, you showed me that broken things can still be beautiful, that choosing to be good matters more than being perfect, that loneliness is not the same as being alone. She bent over him, her tears falling on his face. You cannot die now. Not when I have only just found you. His hand came up to cup her cheek, his thumb brushing away her tears. I am not dying, love. It would take more than silver to kill me. But it hurts abominably, and I am making rather a mess of your dress. She laughed, the sound half-sob. You are making jokes? I am trying to comfort you. Am I doing it wrong? Terribly wrong. Then perhaps you should comfort me instead. His eyes held hers, storm-gray and infinite. Tell me again that I am not a monster. You are not a monster. You are a man who has fought harder than anyone I have ever known to be good. You are a gardener and a protector, and someone who weeps for beauty. You are... Her voice broke. You are someone I could love, if you would let me. The world seemed to stop. Even the fountain went quiet. Marin, Valerian said, his voice wondering. I am immortal. I am cold. I drink blood to survive. I will never age, never change. I will watch you grow old and die, and I will grieve you for centuries. How can you possibly... I know what you are. I have known since the first night, and I do not care. She pressed her forehead to his. I have spent 4 years paying for a choice I made, a choice to protect my son from a man who would have destroyed him. I have been judged and condemned and cast out. I have learned that the respectable world cares nothing for truth or compassion, only for appearances. So forgive me if I do not care that you are vampire. You have shown me more respect, more kindness, more genuine humanity than any human man ever has. The choice you made, he said slowly. The price you paid. Tell me. She took a shaky breath. Toby's father was a gentleman. He promised marriage. When I told him I was with child, he called me a liar and a whore. His family paid me to disappear. I took the money because I had no choice. I needed to feed my baby. But taking it meant admitting guilt. It meant accepting their version of events. My family disowned me. Society shunned me. I have been working ever since to give Toby a life, to prove that I am more than the worst thing anyone has said about me. Valerian's eyes blazed. Tell me his name. No. Marin. No. Because you would kill him, or ruin him, and that would make you the monster you fear being. She smoothed his hair back from his forehead. I do not need vengeance. I need a future. I need hope. I need... She stopped, the words too large, too frightening. Me? He finished softly. Yes. He pulled her down, kissed her with lips that were cold and gentle and tasted of night-blooming jasmine. When he pulled back, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. I cannot offer you a normal life, he said. I cannot give you days, only nights. I cannot age with you. But I can give you my garden, and my protection, and every moment of the centuries I have left. I can give you a home where you will never be judged, never be cast out. I can give you my heart, such as it is, cold and still, but entirely yours. That is all I want. And Toby adores you already. He has been asking when we can live in the manor with the kind lord. Valerian laughed, the sound rusty but genuine. The kind lord who is currently bleeding on his own lawn? The very same. Toby returned then with the butler, an elderly man who took one look at the scene and simply nodded, as though finding his master collapsed with a woman and child in the garden was entirely expected. Between them, they got Valerian into the manor, into a room lined with books and smelling of leather and old paper. The butler, his name was Graves, and he had served the Ravencourt family for 40 years, knowing full well what his master was, extracted the silver bullet with steady hands and bound the wound with strips of clean linen. He will heal quickly, mistress, Graves said to Marin. Vampire flesh knits faster than human. By tomorrow night, he will be nearly whole. Thank you, Marin said. Graves looked at her with sharp, knowing eyes. You stood between him and hunters. You defended him when any sensible woman would have fled. Why? Because he is worth defending. Yes. Graves said quietly. He is, but few see it. His own kind cast him out decades ago for refusing to hunt humans. He has been alone for so long. The old butler's voice softened. I am glad he has found you, mistress, and your boy. He needs family. After Graves left, Marin sat beside Valerian's bed while Toby curled up in a chair by the fire, already half asleep. Valerian's eyes were closed, his breathing slow and even. In the firelight, he looked almost human. Almost, but not quite. There was still that otherworldly quality, that sense of vast time compressed into a single form. I can hear your thoughts, he murmured without opening his eyes. You are wondering if this is madness. I am wondering if I am brave enough for this. You stood in front of a loaded pistol for me. I think your bravery is not in question. That was different. That was instinct. This is choice. She took his hand, laced her fingers through his. Choosing to love you means choosing a life in shadows. It means explaining to Toby why his mother's husband never ages. It means watching my son grow old while you stay young. It means It means being happy, Valerian interrupted. He opened his eyes, fixed her with that storm-gray gaze. It means having a partner who will never leave you, never judge you, never tire of you. It means a home where you are safe and valued. It means your son will have a father who will protect him long after you are gone. It means you will never be alone again. And when I am old and gray, I will love you more, not less. I have lived long enough to know that beauty is not in youth, but in character. You will be beautiful to me at 80 as you are at... He paused. How old are you? 29. 29, he repeated, as though tasting the words. So young, so impossibly young. You were young once. 300 years ago. I barely remember it. He brought her hand to his lips, kissed her knuckles. But with you, I remember what it was to feel, to hope, to believe that tomorrow might be better than today. You have given me back something I thought I had lost forever. What? The future. Marin felt tears prick her eyes again. I am not that special. You are to me. She leaned down and kissed him, tasting the truth of his words on his lips. When she pulled back, she saw that Toby had woken and was watching them with sleepy contentment. Are you going to marry Mr. Valerian, Mama? Her son asked. Marin looked at Valerian, saw the question in his eyes, the hope and fear mingled. Would you like that? She asked her son. Yes, he is kind, and he has a very nice garden, and he promised to teach me about the stars. Did he? I did, Valerian confirmed, though I may have been somewhat delirious from blood loss at the time. You were perfectly lucid, Toby said with the certainty of childhood. You said the stars are the same ones you saw when you were young, and that makes them like old friends. Valerian's expression softened into something achingly tender. I did say that, and I meant it. Then yes, Marin said. I will marry you, Lord Ravencourt, if you will have us. If I will, he laughed, the sound full of wonder. Marin, I would have you if you came with nothing but the clothes on your back. The fact that you come with a brilliant son who sees the world with clear eyes is simply a blessing I do not deserve. You deserve every blessing, she said fiercely, and I will spend the rest of my life making sure you know it. They were married 3 weeks later in the garden, under the arbor where wisteria would bloom in spring. The ceremony was small, just Graves and a minister who asked no questions and accepted Valerian's generous donation to his church with gratitude. Toby stood beside his mother, solemn and proud in his new suit, holding the ring that Valerian would place on Marin's finger. The ring was old, Valerian had told her. It had belonged to his mother 3 centuries ago. The gold was soft with age, the sapphire at its center, the color of twilight. When he slipped it onto her finger, Marin felt the weight of history, of all the years he had carried it, waiting for someone worthy to wear it. I am not worthy, she had whispered. You are the only one who ever has been, he had replied. After the ceremony, they walked through the garden together, the three of them, while Graves prepared a wedding supper in the manor. Toby ran ahead, exploring the paths with the fearlessness of a child who knew he was safe. Marin walked beside her husband, the words still strange and wonderful, and felt something in her chest unfurl. What are you thinking? Valerian asked. That I am happy, that I did not think I would ever be happy again, and yet here I am, married to a vampire in a garden that has seen 3 centuries, and I am happy. Good. He pulled her close, wrapped his arms around her. That is all I want. Your happiness, Toby's happiness, a life that is peaceful and full of small joys. And the hunters, what if they return? They will not. I sent word to the Brotherhood through channels I still maintain. I told them that I am under the protection of the Covenant, an ancient agreement between certain vampire families and the Church. It is a lie, of course. I was cast out of the Covenant decades ago, but they do not know that, and they will not risk violating such an agreement. You lied to protect us. I would do far worse to protect you. His voice was quiet but absolute. I have lived by a code of honor for 2 centuries, Marin. But if anyone threatens you or Toby, I will break that code without hesitation. You are my family now. My family is everything. She tilted her head back to look at him. In the moonlight, his face was beautiful and strange, the face of a man who had seen empires rise and fall, who had watched the world change beyond recognition. But his eyes, when they looked at her, were simply a man's eyes, full of love and wonder and the quiet joy of having found home. I love you, she said. I know it is too soon to say it. We have known each other less than a month. But I love you, Valerian Ravencourt. I love your garden and your gentleness, and the way you fight so hard to be good. I love that you wept at your own gate because you thought beauty was dying. I love that my son's words could reach you when nothing else could. I love— He kissed her, stopping the words. When he pulled back, his eyes were bright. I love you too. I have loved you since the moment you told me that gardens endure, since the moment you saw resilience where I saw only ruin. You have taught me to see myself differently, Marin. You have taught me that 300 years of trying to be good actually means something, that I am not defined by what I am, but by what I choose. You are not vampire, she said. You are Valerian. You are my husband. You are Toby's father. You are a gardener and a protector, and the man I will love until I die. And after you die, he said quietly, I will love you after you die, Marin. I will tend your grave as I tend this garden. I will remember every moment we had together. I will carry you with me through all the centuries that remain. The words should have been morbid, but they were not. They were simply true, a promise made by a man who understood time in ways she never could, who knew that love did not end with death, but transformed into something else, something that endured. Then I will make sure we have many moments worth remembering, she said. They stood together in the garden, husband and wife, while Toby's laughter echoed through the night and the fountain sang its endless song. Above them, the stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, the same stars Valerian had watched for 300 years. But tonight, they looked different. Tonight, they looked like hope. In the years that followed, Marin learned the rhythms of life with a vampire. She learned to sleep during the day and wake at dusk, to move through the world in darkness and find beauty there. She learned which plants bloomed at night, which creatures sang in the shadows. She learned the history of the garden, the stories behind each carefully placed stone, each rare specimen. Toby grew tall and strong, educated by his stepfather in languages and mathematics and the natural sciences. He learned about vampires not as monsters, but as another form of life, neither good nor evil, but simply different. He learned to judge beings by their choices rather than their nature. And Marin learned that love could be both finite and infinite. that her mortal years with Valerian were precious because they were limited, but that his love for her would extend beyond those years into eternity. It was a strange comfort, knowing that she would be remembered, that her life would matter to someone who would live to see the 25th century. On their 5th anniversary, Valerian took her to the fountain where he had first told her what he was. The garden was in full bloom, the night air heavy with the scent of roses and jasmine. Toby was away at university, studying botany with the same passion his stepfather had instilled in him. "I have something for you," Valerian said. He handed her a box, small and wrapped in silk. Inside was a handkerchief, the same handkerchief she had mended 5 years ago, the one that had started everything. "I have carried this with me every day since you returned it to me," he said. "It reminds me that broken things can be made whole, that even something torn beyond repair can be saved with patience and care and love." Marin traced the fine stitches she had made so long ago, remembering that night, the candle burning low, her fingers cramping as she worked. She had been so tired then, so worn down by the weight of survival. She had not known that mending a simple piece of silk would change her entire life. "Thank you," she whispered. "No, my love. Thank you." He took her hands in his, cold fingers wrapping around warm ones. "Thank you for seeing me, for defending me, for choosing me despite everything I am and everything I am not. Thank you for giving me a family, a future, a reason to tend this garden for another 300 years. She kissed him there beside the fountain, under the stars that had watched him for centuries. And she knew, with the certainty that comes from deep love, that this was exactly where she was meant to be, in a garden that endured, with a man who had learned to hope again, building a life that was strange and beautiful, and entirely their own. The angels on the fountain looked down with their carved faces, frozen in their eternal expressions of rapture. But tonight, Marin thought they looked less like despair and more like blessing, as though even stone could recognize the miracle of two broken people making each other whole.